This is a joke, right? Sarah Chen stared at the holographic scan floating above her workstation at Outpost Europa. The alien vessel before her defied every principle of modern spacecraft design. Its hull appeared to be made of some crystalline material that pulsed with an inner light, and its propulsion system, if you could call it that, seemed to operate on principles she'd never encountered in 15 years of xenoengineering. "The Helios Collective assures me this is quite serious," replied Director Hammond, his weathered face creased with concern. "They've tried every automated repair facility in 3 sectors. No AI can even begin to diagnose what's wrong with it." Sarah walked around the hologram, her cybernetic eye whirring as it captured every detail. The ship was beautiful in a strange alien way, like a piece of abstract art rather than a functional vessel. Its surface rippled with geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "And they brought it to us, to human engineers." Sarah couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. The Helios Collective was one of the most advanced civilizations in known space. They typically viewed human technology the way a quantum physicist might view a steam engine, quaint but hopelessly primitive. "They did more than that," Hammond said, pulling up another hologram. "They're offering us 50 million credits to repair it. That's 10 times our annual operating budget." Sarah whistled. "What's so special about this ship that they're willing to pay that much?" "They won't say. Classification level beyond our security clearance." Hammond shrugged. "But here's the interesting part. The ship's energy signature matches nothing in any known database. It's completely unique." Sarah's curiosity was officially piqued. She'd always loved a good puzzle, and this ship was the biggest one she'd seen in years. "How long do we have?" "They're giving us 3 weeks. After that, they'll write it off as a lost cause." Hammond's expression turned serious. "I don't need to tell you what this could mean for Outpost Europa. If we can repair this ship, we'll prove that human intuition and creativity still have value in an age of automated perfection." Sarah nodded, already running calculations in her head. "I'll need my full team. And access to the historical archives, all the way back to pre-space Earth engineering records. You think 20th century technology will help fix an alien ship we can't even understand? Director, do you know why humans are still relevant in an age of AI?" Sarah's cybernetic eye glowed as she zoomed in on a particularly complex section of the ship's structure. "It's because we don't just think outside the box. We forget the box exists. Sometimes the best solution to a future problem lies in the past." Hammond authorized her requests with a wave of his hand. "The ship arrives in 6 hours. The collective is sending their top xenotechnologist, Dr. Frixel, to observe." Sarah grimaced. She'd worked with Helios observers before. They tended to be condescending at best, openly hostile at worst. "Wonderful. I'm sure they'll love watching us primitive humans pawing at their precious technology. Just try not to cause an interstellar incident," Hammond pleaded. "No promises." Sarah grinned, already sending messages to her team. "Tell them to bring the ship to Bay 7. And Director, we're going to need a lot of coffee." 6 hours later, Sarah stood in Bay 7 with her team, watching as the massive cargo hauler carefully maneuvered the crystalline ship into position. Up close, it was even more impressive. And more bizarre. The hull seemed to respond to the light, creating cascading patterns that rippled across its surface. Dr. Vrixel emerged from a transport pod, their iridescent scales shifting color in the bay's harsh lighting. The xenotechnologist's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as they regarded Sarah and her team with barely concealed skepticism. "I must register my formal protest," Vrixel announced, their universal translator giving their words a metallic edge. "Allowing non-automated systems to interface with technology of this sophistication violates every safety protocol the collective has established." Sarah stepped forward, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. "Dr. Frixel, I'm Sarah Chen, lead engineer. I understand your concerns, but I think you'll find human engineers have a few tricks up our sleeves." Vrixel ignored the offered hand. Your species only achieved faster than light travel 3 generations ago. The technology in this vessel predates your discovery of electricity. Then maybe we're perfect for the job, Sarah replied, keeping her voice level. Sometimes you need a fresh perspective to solve an old problem. She turned to her team. Maya, I want comprehensive scans of that whole material. Raj, focus on the propulsion system. If we can figure out how it's supposed to move, we might understand how it's supposed to work. Diego, start comparing these energy signatures to everything in our historical database, human and alien. You can't simply treat this vessel like one of your primitive spacecraft, Vrixel protested. The systems are far too complex for manual intervention. Sarah's cybernetic eye whirred as she completed her initial scan. With respect, Doctor, if your automated systems could fix this ship, you wouldn't be here. So why don't you let us try it our way? As her team sprang into action, Sarah noticed something interesting. The ship's crystalline surface seemed to react to their presence, the patterns shifting more rapidly whenever someone approached. She reached out and placed her hand against the hull. The surface was warm to the touch, and she could have sworn she felt a vibration, almost like a pulse. Her cybernetic eye captured readings that made her breath catch in her throat. Dr. Vrixel, she called out, not taking her eyes off the hull. You said this ship predates human electricity, but I don't think that's quite right. I think it predates your civilization too. This isn't just an old ship, it's an artifact, and it's still alive. The revelation hung in the air as the crystalline surface pulsed beneath her hand, almost like it was responding to her touch. Sarah Chen smiled. This was going to be interesting. Maya, she called out, bring me the oldest technical manual we have on crystalline computing, and someone get me a cup of coffee. We've got work to do. 3 days into the project, Sarah's team had taken over Bay 7 completely. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing everything from ancient Earth crystal radio schematics to the latest in quantum computing theory. Coffee cups littered workstations, and the air hummed with the sound of scanning equipment and heated debates. Dr. Vrixel stood in the corner, all 4 eyes twitching as they watched Sarah splice primitive fiber optic cables into the ship's crystalline matrix. This is absolutely unprecedented, they muttered. The potential for catastrophic system failure is 87%. Sarah interrupted, not looking up from her work. I did the math, but the potential for success is non-zero, which is better than what your automated systems gave us. She carefully connected another cable, watching as light pulsed through the crystal in response. Maya rushed over, her tablet displaying a complex series of waveforms. Sarah, you need to see this. We've been analyzing the energy patterns in the hull, comparing them to every known form of data transmission. Nothing matched until Diego had a crazy idea. He ran it against biological patterns. Sarah's cybernetic eye zoomed in on the data. It's similar to neural activity, she breathed. The ship isn't just alive, it's thinking. Impossible, Vrixel declared. Biological computing was attempted by numerous civilizations. It proved too unstable, too unpredictable. Maybe that's because they were trying to force it to work like traditional computers, Sarah said, an idea forming. We've been approaching this all wrong. We're not trying to repair a ship, we're trying to heal it. She turned to her team. Raj, remember that paper you wrote on biomimetic repair systems? Get me everything you have. Diego, I need you to modify our diagnostic tools to treat these energy patterns like synaptic responses. Maya, find me someone who specializes in synobiology. This is highly irregular, Vrixel protested. The collective's protocols clearly state, your protocols aren't working. Sarah snapped. This ship is dying while we stand here arguing about rules. She softened her tone. Doctor, I know this goes against everything you believe about proper engineering, but sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from breaking all the rules. The alien scientist's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue. You truly believe you can save it? I believe we have to try. Sarah turned back to the ship, placing her hand against its warm surface. The pattern swirled around her fingers, weaker than before but still responsive. And I think it wants us to try too. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah's team worked in shifts, applying principles from fields as diverse as neurology, crystallography, and marine biology. They treated the ship like a living organism, using modified medical equipment to map its neural pathways and identify damaged sections. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a rare break, Sarah was reading through historical archives when she found references to early experiments in crystal healing, not the pseudoscience kind, but legitimate research into using crystals for data storage and energy transmission. "Look at this," she called to her team, projecting the archived papers. In the 2030s, researchers discovered certain crystalline structures could be programmed with specific vibrational frequencies. They abandoned the research when quantum computing took off, but what if those ancient humans were onto something? Maya's eyes lit up. The ship's hull, it's not just storing data, it's resonating with it, like a massive crystalline brain. And if we can match those frequencies, Sarah began, we could potentially stimulate neural regrowth. Raj finished, already running calculations. Dr. Frixell moved closer, their skepticism warring with scientific curiosity. You intend to perform the equivalent of neural reconstruction on a spacecraft using principles from primitive Earth medicine. Exactly, Sarah grinned. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. They worked through the night, converting medical regeneration equipment to project specific frequencies into the ship's crystalline structure. It was dangerous, delicate work. One wrong frequency could shatter the entire hull. Sarah's cybernetic eye worked overtime, monitoring thousands of variables simultaneously. As dawn broke over Europa's ice fields, Sarah made the final adjustments. The ship's surface had become almost transparent, the internal neural patterns clearly visible. They pulsed weakly, like a failing heartbeat. "All monitors ready," Maya reported. "Regeneration field stable," Raj added. "Beginning transmission in 3, 2, 1. The modified regeneration field activated with a high-pitched hum. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the neural patterns began to strengthen. The crystalline surface rippled with increasing energy, patterns flowing more smoothly, more naturally. "It's working," Sarah whispered, watching as dead sections of the neural network began to reactivate. The ship's surface grew warmer under her hand, its patterns swirling with renewed vigor. Dr. Frixell's scales had turned a bright, astonished yellow. "This defies all known engineering principles," they said, but there was wonder in their voice rather than condemnation. "That's the thing about humans," Sarah replied, watching as life flowed back into the ancient vessel. "We have a habit of doing the impossible, not because we're smarter or more advanced, but because nobody told us we couldn't." As the ship's systems continued to revive, Sarah couldn't help but smile. They'd done more than just repair a piece of technology. They'd helped save a form of life nobody even knew existed. And they'd done it by combining the newest technology with the oldest wisdom, proving that sometimes the best way forward is to look back. The ship pulsed beneath her hand, its patterns now strong and steady. They still had work to do, but Sarah knew they'd crossed a threshold. Human ingenuity had once again proved its worth in a galaxy of automated perfection. As the ship's neural network stabilized, it began to communicate, not in words or data packets, but in patterns of light and energy that danced across its crystalline surface. Sarah and her team worked around the clock to decipher these signals, their improvised translation matrix struggling to make sense of an entirely alien form of consciousness. "There's definitely a pattern here," Maya said, her eyes red from lack of sleep as she studied the latest readings. "It's not random. There's structure, rhythm, almost like music," Sarah finished, her cybernetic eye capturing and analyzing the flowing patterns. "It's not just sending data, it's singing." Dr. Frixell, who had become surprisingly supportive since their initial breakthrough, moved closer to examine the displays. The crystalline chorus, they whispered, scales shifting to a deep purple of awe. The what? Sarah asked, looking up from her work. A legend among my people, Vrixel explained. It is said that before the rise of modern civilizations, before the age of automated efficiency, there existed a species that grew their ships from living crystal. They were said to traverse the stars in vessels that sang to the cosmos, but they vanished millennia ago, leaving only stories. Sarah's hand rested on the ship's warm surface, feeling its gentle pulse. Maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they're just waiting to be found. She turned to her team. New priority. I want every scrap of information about these crystalline chorus legends, and get me deep space stellar maps, as old as you can find. The ship's patterns shifted, becoming more complex, more urgent. Sarah's translation matrix began picking up fragments of meaning. Stars, song, home. The neural network they'd helped heal wasn't just storing navigation data, it was carrying memories. Look at this, Raj called out, projecting a three-dimensional star chart. I've been analyzing the energy patterns in the ship's neural pathways. They're not just random firings, they're coordinates. Hundreds of them, spanning half the galaxy. A map. Sarah breathed. We're not just looking at a ship, we're looking at a star chart of the crystalline chorus civilization. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an engineering project anymore. It was potentially the greatest archaeological discovery in human history, and it had only been possible because they'd approached the problem with human intuition rather than automated logic. We need to tell the collective, Vrixel said, their scales rippling with excitement. Wait, Sarah held up her hand. Before we do that, I want to understand why this ship came to us now. After all these millennia, why reveal itself? She turned to the ship, placing both hands on its surface. The pattern swirled around her fingers, responding to her touch in a way they didn't with anyone else. Her cybernetic eye recorded everything, searching for patterns within patterns. Maya, adjust the translation matrix. Don't look for words, look for emotions, intentions. Diego, give me a visual representation of the neural activity over the past week. The holographic displays shifted, showing cascading waves of light and color. Sarah watched as the patterns resolved into something like a story. Fear, escape, seeking, hope. It was running, she said softly. Running from something, and it chose to come to us. Not to the automated repair stations, not to the advanced civilizations. To humans. Why would it do that? Vrixel asked. Because we're different, Maya said, understanding dawning in her eyes. We still repair things by hand. We still trust our instincts. We still. She gestured at their jury-rigged equipment and manual tools. We still touch. The ship's patterns pulsed in what Sarah could now recognize as affirmation. Its neural network had been damaged not by accident or age, but by attempted interface with automated systems. It had been searching for beings who could understand it as a living thing, not just a piece of technology. The crystalline chorus didn't vanish, Sarah realized. They went into hiding. From a galaxy it was becoming too automated, too efficient, too disconnected. She looked at her team, then at Vrixel. We need to make a decision. If we reveal everything we've learned, this ship, this living being, will become a research specimen. Every automated system in the galaxy will try to analyze it, study it, replicate it. That would kill it, Vrixel said, surprising everyone. Their scales had shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue, just as it nearly died before finding you. Sarah nodded. So what do we do? The ship's pattern swirled more intensely, its song becoming clearer in their translation matrix. It wasn't just sharing coordinates, it was sharing a choice, a direction, a purpose. It wants to take us somewhere, Sarah said, reading the patterns. To others like it. But it will only reveal the way to those who can understand its song. She looked at her team, seeing the same excitement in their eyes that she felt. This was why humans still had a place in a galaxy of perfect machines, because sometimes understanding required more than logic. Sometimes it required heart. Director Hammond is not going to like this, she smiled. But I think it's time for Outpost Unrivaled to begin a new research mission, one that requires a very particular kind of expertise. The ship's patterns danced with joy, its song growing stronger. In its crystalline surface, Sarah could see the reflection of her team, human and alien alike, united by something more powerful than technology, the simple, profound ability to reach out and connect. They had come to repair a ship. Instead, they had found a key to a hidden history of the galaxy, and it had chosen them precisely because they were willing to break all the rules, to trust their instincts, to work with their hands and hearts as well as their minds. The adventure was just beginning. The alarms began at midnight, station time. Sarah was bent over her workstation, analyzing the latest translations from the crystalline ship, when every emergency system in Bay 7 activated simultaneously. Multiple containment breaches detected, the station AI announced. Unknown energy signature expanding. Emergency protocols engaged. Sarah's cybernetic eye rapidly processed the sensor data flooding her displays. The crystalline ship was pulsing with intense light, its neural patterns chaotic and accelerating. More concerning were the readings from the station's protective fields. They were failing. "Everyone out," she shouted, but her team was already moving. Years of working in space had taught them all when to run. Only Sarah and Dr. Vrixel remained, their faces lit by the ship's increasingly bright glow. "The automated systems are initiating emergency containment," Vrixel said, their scales flickering between warning colors. "They'll flood the bay with nullification fields." Sarah's mind raced. The nullification fields would destroy the ship's neural network. Kill it, she corrected herself. But if they did nothing, the expanding energy field might tear apart the station. "Override the automatics," she ordered, fingers flying over her controls. "Give me manual control of all base systems. That violates every safety protocol," Vrixel began. "Those protocols will kill it." Sarah snapped. She placed her hand on the ship's surface, wincing at the heat. The patterns were frantic now, almost desperate. "It's not attacking us," she realized. "It's afraid." Director Hammond's voice crackled over the comm. "Chen, what the hell is happening down there?" "The containment systems." "Sir, I need you to trust me," Sarah interrupted. "Delay the automated response. Give me 5 minutes." There was a pause that felt like eternity. "You have 3, Hammond replied. "After that, the station AI takes over." Sarah turned to Vrixel. "Help me. You've studied the legends of the crystalline chorus. What could make one of their ships react like this?" The xenotechnologist's scales rippled thoughtfully. "The stories speak of a great diaspora, a time when they fled from something that could corrupt their neural networks." Sarah's cybernetic eye captured a pattern shift in the ship's surface. "It's detected something," she said. "Something out there." She brought up the long-range sensor displays, and her blood ran cold. A fleet of ships was dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Their design was unlike anything in current databases, but their energy signatures were unmistakable. They were running fully automated systems. "They found it," Vrixel whispered. "The hunters that drove the chorus into hiding." The crystalline ship's panic increased, its energy field expanding further. Warning klaxons blared as the station's structural integrity began to fail. 2 minutes, Hammond's voice warned. Sarah pressed both hands against the ship's surface, ignoring the heat that threatened to burn her skin. "Listen to me," she said, hoping the ship could understand. "We won't let them take you. But you have to trust us. You have to let us help." The pattern swirled around her hands, fear warring with hope. Sarah's translation matrix picked up fragments. "Danger/hide/protect/flee. Maya," she called over the comm. "Remember how we modified the regeneration field?" Reverse it. Full power. That could kill it. Maya protested. It'll look dead, Sarah corrected, while masking its true energy signature. She turned back to the ship. We can hide you. Make them think you're just an inert piece of technology. But you have to let us. 1 minute, Hammond announced. The ship's patterns shifted, questioning. Trust/truth/protect. Yes, Sarah promised. We'll protect you. Humanity protected its own stories, its own way of doing things, against the tide of automation. We'll protect yours too. There was a moment of perfect stillness. Then the ship's patterns began to slow, its glow dimming as it allowed them to mask its true nature. Maya. Now. The modified field activated, washing over the crystalline surface in waves of carefully calibrated energy. To any scanning system, it would appear to be dampening the ship's power signature. In reality, it was helping the ship mimic the energy patterns of mundane technology. 30 seconds, Hammond said. Sarah held her breath, watching as the ship's neural patterns dropped to almost imperceptible levels. Her cybernetic eye could still detect the faint pulse of life, but standard sensors would read only inert crystal. Energy surge contained, the station AI announced. Containment levels normalizing. Sarah sagged with relief, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled them from the ship's now cool surface. We did it, she whispered. The automated ships are hailing the station, Hammond reported. They're requesting permission to dock and inspect all unusual technology. Sarah exchanged looks with Vrixel. The xenotechnologist's scales had settled into a determined green. Tell them, Vrixel said, that the ship they detected was a failed experimental prototype. The energy surge was its final malfunction. There's nothing here worth investigating. As Hammond relayed the message, Sarah watched the alien fleet on her displays. Would they believe it, or would they see through their deception? After what felt like hours, the ships began to move away. Their automated systems had detected nothing worth investigating. Just another piece of failed technology in a galaxy full of discarded experiments. When they were gone, Sarah placed her hand back on the ship's surface. Slowly, cautiously, patterns of light began to swirl around her fingers. It's time, she said to Vrixel. We need to get it somewhere safe. Somewhere they'll never think to look for living ships and ancient songs. Vrixel's scales rippled with curiosity. Where? Sarah smiled. Earth. The last place in the galaxy where people still fix things by hand, where ships are more than just machines, and where ancient stories are still remembered and protected. The ship's patterns brightened at her words, its song humming through their translation matrix with renewed hope. They had passed the test, not just of technical skill, but of trust and understanding. Now they just had to figure out how to smuggle a legendary living ship across the galaxy without anyone noticing. But that, Sarah thought, was exactly the kind of impossible problem humans did best. 3 months later, Sarah stood on a beach in New Zealand, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded her of crystalline neural patterns. Behind her, cleverly disguised in an abandoned shipyard, the living ship hummed contentedly. The last inspection team left convinced it was nothing but a failed prototype, Maya reported, joining her by the water. Director Hammond's story about an experimental crystal-based hull design is holding up perfectly. Everyone thinks we're just eccentric humans, tinkering with outdated technology. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. Her cybernetic eye caught the faint shimmer of energy fields, their modified containment system, protecting the ship from automated scans while allowing its neural network to thrive. Dr. Vrixel emerged from the shipyard, their scales reflecting the sunset in iridescent patterns. The xenotechnologist had surprised everyone by requesting permanent assignment to Earth as a cultural observer. The first of the others has made contact, they announced quietly. A ship hidden in the asteroid belt of Proxima Centauri. It detected our friend's song and recognized the harmonics. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. They discovered that the crystalline ships could communicate across vast distances, their songs traveling through subspace in ways that defied conventional physics. How many more? Dozens, perhaps hundreds, Vrixel replied. Hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting for a sign that it was safe to emerge. They'd been watching humanity's development with great interest, waiting to see if we'd become like everyone else. Maya understood. If we'd abandoned manual skills and human intuition for complete automation. Sarah watched as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, ancient ships were singing to each other, sharing news of a species that still valued the touch of organic hands, the wisdom of experience, the importance of connection. We've received a request, Vrixel continued, their scales shifting to excited yellows and greens. They want to establish a network of repair sanctuaries, places where their ships can be maintained by those who understand them as living beings, not machines. Let me guess, Sarah grinned. They want humans to run them. Not just run them, to teach others, to show that there's value in preserving old skills alongside new technology, to demonstrate that efficiency isn't everything. A warm breeze carried the salt scent of the ocean, and Sarah thought about how far they'd come from that first moment in Bay 7. They'd set out to repair a ship and ended up discovering a hidden civilization, one that had chosen humanity as its protectors precisely because of what others saw as their weaknesses. We'll need to expand the team, Maya said thoughtfully. Find more engineers who can work with both hands and heart. And we'll need to document everything we've learned about crystal neural networks. But not in any database, Sarah added. Some knowledge needs to be passed down person to person, through experience and understanding. The ship's song reached them even here on the beach, a gentle harmony that spoke of gratitude and hope. In the months since they'd smuggled it to Earth, they'd learned so much about its civilization. The crystalline chorus hadn't fled from progress. They'd fled from the loss of connection, from a galaxy that had forgotten the value of organic understanding in its rush to automate everything. You know, Vrixel said, their scales settling into thoughtful blues, my people have always prided themselves on being at the forefront of automation. We thought humans were primitive because you still did things manually. But now I understand. You weren't falling behind. You were remembering something the rest of us forgot. Sarah's cybernetic eye captured the moment. The sunset, the ship's contentment, her team's quiet pride. A perfect blend of technology and human experience. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, she said, not because they're more efficient, but because they keep us connected to what matters. In the growing darkness, more stars emerged, and Sarah wondered how many of them sheltered crystalline ships, waiting to be found by hands that could understand them. Humanity had been chosen as the guardians of an ancient legacy, not despite their seemingly primitive methods, but because of them. The ship's song shifted, sharing images of other vessels emerging from hiding, seeking out the humans who could help them thrive. A new chapter was beginning, not just for the crystalline chorus, but for humanity as well. They would show the galaxy that true progress didn't mean abandoning the past, that the most powerful technology was worthless without the human touch to guide it. Well, Sarah said, turning back toward the shipyard, we've got work to do. Those ships aren't going to repair themselves. She paused, grinning. And thank goodness for that. Behind her, the living ship's song brightened in agreement, its crystalline surface casting patterns of light that danced like stars on the water. In its ancient wisdom, it had recognized what the rest of the galaxy had forgotten, that the future belonged not to those who embraced automation blindly, but to those who remembered the value of a hand on the helm, a mind that could think beyond protocols, and a heart that could understand the song of the stars. The legacy of human innovation would live on, not in cold efficiency, but in the warm touch that could wake ancient ships and remind the galaxy that some things were worth doing the old way.